show.
Welcome to episode 97 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast, hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. As of Monday, March 20th, 2023, the Toronto Maple Leafs, as I've been saying pretty much every week, are still in second place in the Atlantic Division, on pace for one of their greatest seasons in franchise history. But it's too damn bad that the Boston Bruins are on pace to have maybe the greatest regular season of all time. Since our last podcast, the Leafs lost to the Colorado Avalanche in a shootout, followed that up with a 5-2 win over the Carolina Hurricanes, and then beat the Ottawa Senators 5-4 in a shootout. We're going to go over the week that was in Leafland and give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that went down with this team. We might also touch on the Eastern Conference playoff race, as we've been doing pretty much every week for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, doing very well. The sun is shining. It's getting warm in the nation's capital. Snow is melting. Very exciting to see the pavement again. Everything's not covered in the frozen tundra. But let's get to it. Episode 97 of the Gluttons For Punishment podcast. Only one player in the history of the franchise has ever done that number, and it wasn't that long ago. Joe Thornton, number 97 of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Joe's a funny one, man, because I feel like if you asked 100 Leaf fans their opinion of the Joe Thornton experiment, you might get 100 different answers, positive, negative, in between. I look back at it now, and to be honest, I have to kind of be reminded of it. So just that's not a good sign of Joe Thornton's contributions, but I guess it's cool anytime a Hall of Famer rocks your favorite team's jersey.
Yeah, there really aren't a lot of great Joe Thornton memories. As a Toronto Maple Leafs, as legendary as he is, the great career that he's had, the great beard that he has. I mean, the beard sticks out to me a little more.
Yeah, exactly from that season.
From his time with the Leafs. Other than that, I mean, he scored a few goals playing with Matthews and Marner at one point, and that's pretty much all I can recall from the Joe Thornton era in Toronto.
Yeah, but because of who he is and his status, future Hall of Famer, one of the best passers the league's ever seen, is it weird to rock a Thornton Leafs jersey? If you're at the game and you saw Thornton, would you be like, that's cool or that's weird?
No, I think it's cool because he's a legend of the game. So
fair enough.
Go for it. If you want a Joe Thornton Leafs jersey, by all means, rock that thing proudly.
Yeah, on that topic, though, you know who I was hoping for so bad, like at the end of his career, he's still playing, but at the end of his career in the NHL, when he was bouncing around, Jágr.
I love Jágr.
I wanted Jágr, like 42-year-old Jágr, on the Leafs so hard, and I 100% would have bought that jersey, but unfortunately, it never happened.
Man, Jágr's easily one of my top 3 to 5 favorite players. Like, that was my childhood. Jaromír Jágr, man, love that guy, and he's still playing. He's playing somewhere in the Czech Republic, I think. What is he, like 52 now?
Yeah, you get random clips on Instagram of plays he makes, goals he scores, passes he makes. Probably still waking up and doing 100 squats every day, like his dad had him doing at like 3 years old, apparently.
Absolutely.
But Yags, the man.
All right, man. Let's get right into the Leafs talk now. So as I mentioned off the top of the show, since our last podcast, shootout loss to the Avalanche, win over Carolina, and then win over Ottawa. So we'll start with that Avalanche game.
Yeah. Playing
an Avalanche team that has been ravaged by injuries this season, but they're getting healthier now. They're still missing Gabriel Landeskog. I mean, losing Nazem Kadri in the offseason was a big loss for them as well. But they're starting to figure it out, man. They have been running over teams recently, and they have creeped up the standings very, very quickly. They are now third in the Central Division. They're only 3 points out of the lead in the Central, and they took it to the Leafs, man. The Leafs finished with under 20 shots on goal. Like, that does not happen very often.
Yeah.
And maybe they hit 20 shots in the overtime, but I think after regulation, from my recollection, they had like 19 shots on goal. But anyway,
it wasn't good.
What do you think about that game? Because the Leafs kind of look slow. They got outplayed. Their
Yeah.
offense wasn't really able to generate much against Colorado. Did that concern you at all?
I think with that game, and this is not me making an excuse for the Leafs, but I think to play that Avalanche team at that time when they're buzzing and they're coming on, compared to the Leafs team that's still trying to get used to all the guys in their lineup, the pairings, and it seems like Keefe's changing the forward group within games more times than I've ever seen before. So I just thought it was a bad matchup for the Leafs. To be able to get the point was great, but I'll tell you, Bruno, and I watched Colorado quite a bit earlier in the season because the Avalanche, I love to watch them. But I will say that I haven't watched much of them since this whole run started. They look fucking good, man. I don't know who's beating Colorado. There, I said it. Just watching them move the puck to transition. Cale Makar is bananas. It's like, again, sometimes you have to watch a game to be reminded of how good a certain player is, because you have these things in your head of, oh yeah, he's good. And then you watch it and you're like, no, he takes over the game. And then you look at that D with Gerard, Bowen Byron, who I think is very underrated, and Devin Tays. Like I said, man, I do not know who's beating the Avalanche. And everyone's talking about how the East is an absolute gauntlet to get through. Every team you play is going to be a top team. But in my mind, anyway, if someone asked me to do a power rankings of who's going to win the Stanley Cup, I got Colorado at the top.
I agree with you, man, especially in the Western Conference. It's starting to shake out exactly as we saw it 2 years ago. Because if you remember last season, Vegas had an off year. They missed the playoffs. Colorado was the class of the West. But now you take a look at the standings. Vegas leads the Pacific Division. And sure, it's still a tight race with Vegas, LA, and Edmonton. But I think if you pulled 100 hockey fans, 98 out of 100 of them would say that Vegas is the best team in the Pacific Division.
Maybe Oilers fans chime in on Anthony Bruno.
And that's not only because of how well they've played this season. I mean, since they've been in the league, they have essentially been, one of the top three teams in the Western Conference since the second that they entered the National Hockey League. But other than that, man, Colorado now looks like they're right back to where they were last season. Now, I don't want to say they were as dominant as last season because they just had more talent. Like I said, Kadri's off the team. Landeskog is still out of the lineup. And it still remains to be seen if Landeskog is actually going to come back before the playoffs. And who knows? He could be out for the entire season. He might even miss the playoffs as well. But as it stands right now, man, that team is terrifying. They've won 5 games in a row. They're starting to find their groove. And I think they came into that game against the Leafs wanting to make a big-time statement against an elite team. Yeah, and they sure as hell did, man. Like you said, Cale Makar just controls the entire game. Sheldon Keefe talked about it after the game. He's like, when this dude is playing half the game, when he's on the ice, he has the puck. And you don't have the puck more often than not. So that's obviously a huge advantage for them. Like, they can be depleted in other areas of the lineup, but as long as they have all those horses on defense, that's a really tough team, man. So that was a little concerning to see, Lepore, because I've been harping about this for the last few podcasts, for years now, that the Leafs need to find a way to be better offensively in like high leverage situations. When the game really matters and it gets tight, they got to find ways to score goals, and they haven't been able to do that to finish off some of these playoff series in recent years. And when I see a game like that against Colorado, I'm like, man, it would have been nice to see someone just take over in the third period, to see Marner or Matthews or Nylander just say, you know what? I'm going to fly down the wing and just snap one top shelf. Or I'm going to get to the middle of the ice and I'm going to make a play to score a goal. And we just didn't see that against Colorado.
Yeah. It's funny when you look at the division, right? So you have Dallas still at the top, but Colorado's charging hard. Minnie's still sitting in second. And who knows how it'll play out. And if I had to bet right now, I'd bet that the Avalanche end up winning the division within. They have 12 games to go. But think if you're Minnesota, I mean, you had a lot of obstacles this year. They've done very well, a nice balanced team. They're on pace for like 100 and whatever points. And your first round congratulations handshake is the Colorado Avalanche, who are only there because they had a rough start to the season. That sucks, that's man. That sucks. Like, Minnie's probably there just hoping that if they do get clipped, Dallas gets clipped too, and they get Dallas in the first round instead of the Avs. It's funny how quickly we change, right? A few weeks ago, we're looking at that division and we're like, man, Dallas has a pretty easy path out of this division. And now you look at it and we're not even thinking there's any possibility of it not being Colorado in the Western Conference Final.
All right, so Lepore, briefcase of $1 million. You always do this.
I love
to
these.
Me, so now I'm doing it to you.
Yeah.
Would you take the Avalanche to win the Western Conference right now?
Yes.
100%. Like no doubt in your mind.
If I had to pick one team.
Yeah.
Because of course anything can happen, but I just look head to head. There's nobody I would put against them who I would say I favor them over Colorado. Like that's how I would see it. I mean, even Vegas, it's tough, man. Like Colorado, they're battle tested, they're experienced. They've won now. Nathan MacKinnon, he looked amazing the other night. Like, can he just like relax a little bit? Like when you watch him, his feet are just going 100 miles an hour.
He's terrifying, man.
Oh my God. Imagine how intimidating that is. And I guess it's the whole thing with speed. When he comes in the zone, I bet a lot of his success, like they say about Gretzky and then Crosby, where they have so many weapons in their arsenal that it was so intimidating that it would make you make a mistake because are they going to pass it? Are they going to stop? Are they going to shoot it? Are they going to dish it off? Like you had no idea what they were going to do. When you see McKinnon, and I guess McDavid's the same, they just come in so fast that I know myself, I would just be so nervous and have anxiety as he's flying at me. So it's going to cause me to make a mistake. I'm going to overcommit. I'm going to jump on something. So unbelievable player, man. And I'm happy for Nate because I'm not going to say like he won the Stanley Cup last year, but I think now more than ever, he's in that talk of like, he's not the best player in the league, but I feel like for a while he kind of left that discussion. And with the scoring he's putting up this year, he's back in it.
I think one thing MacKinnon has that McDavid and Matthews and go down the list, Draisaitl and Pasternak maybe lack a little bit. He has like this mean streak to him and this physicality factor where he will literally run you over in the offensive zone. Like when he's trying to get the puck or if he's trying to like bull through you to win a puck battle, like he is way stronger than people realize. And that's the one thing I think is a little bit more intimidating about him is not only does he have the elite speed and explosiveness, he's literally trying to run you over at the same time.
Yeah, he's got the asshole factor. But I'll ask you, Bruno, briefcase of $1 million. Who's winning the West?
I would take the Avalanche as well.
Boring.
And I was just going to read off the betting odds right now, Lepore, because they agree with both of us. The Avalanche right now are plus 250 favorites to win the West.
250? That's it?
Yeah, plus 250. Ooh. The Vegas Golden Knights are next at plus 450.
Okay.
And then the Oilers are plus 550. So the betting markets clearly think that either Colorado, Vegas, or Edmonton is going to represent the West in the Cup final.
What's Dallas?
And Dallas is right behind those three teams. It's 6-1.
That's not bad. 6-1 for the Stars. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's a really good team too. They're deep. They got firepower up front, good goaltending. I like their decor. Like that's a team that could easily get to the Cup final too, in my opinion. It's time for a quick break because we have a public service announcement. Manscaped now has beard products. If you haven't already heard, the leaders in below the waist grooming are traveling north of your South Pole with their revolutionary Beard Hedger Pro Kit. They have two brand new products, the Weed Whacker 2.0 and the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, which confirms they have all the best tools for your hygiene toolbox. Tame your mane from waist to face by going to manscaped.com and using our exclusive promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, Manscaped has done it again. They are always thinking about us men who desperately need help looking our best.
And speaking of men who desperately need help looking their best, Anthony Bruno, I have been through a lot of nose hair trimmers, embarrassingly enough, and they all suck. They either don't cut at all or they just pull your hairs out and it hurts like a bitch. But the Weed Whacker 2.0 goes in there like a buzzsaw. And you're good to go, man. It is hands down the best nose hair trimmer I have ever used. Head to manscaped.com, GFP20 for 20% off and get the best product for your nose hair that you possibly can.
You said it, man. It doesn't pull on your hairs. It goes in there nice and smooth, cuts everything, gets the job done. Your nose feels nice and clean. Same thing in your ears. And then don't forget the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. Now that Manscaped is putting out beard products, are you kidding me? These guys put out top of the line stuff again. I'm not just saying this because they're a part of this show. Like, they have incredible products that make you look good, feel good, and perform good. So get 20% off and free shipping using GFP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using our exclusive promo code GFP20.
Okay, one more question, Bruno, and this one could be controversial. The Colorado Avalanche call Kyle Dubas tomorrow, or we'll say in the summer. Okay. Let's imagine both players are on the same contract for the same money. Would you trade Auston Matthews for Nathan MacKinnon?
Yes.
Quick answer, Bruno. Quick answer.
Yes, and I don't even really have to think about this. And this has nothing to do with Matthews having a down season. And last year, I know he won the Hart Trophy. He had the best season of any player in the league last year. It's really as simple as that. No one was saying, I would say this, Lepore, the smart people were all recognizing that McDavid was still the best player in the world based on his resume, based on everything that he's done up to this point. But last year, Matthews had the best season in the league, scoring his 60 goals, dominating night in and night out, everything he did at 5-on-5 defensively, blah, 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 blah. But I've always been of the opinion that Nathan MacKinnon is the second best player in the league.
Really?
Like,
Funny how I made that point earlier that I thought that conversation kind of faded a bit. Wow. Okay.
And see, that's the thing. It did fade a little bit. It did fade a little bit because he's gone through some injuries. He maybe hasn't been in the lineup as consistently as the other top guys, but man, oh man, you look at numbers over the last 5 years in terms of points per game, even playoff production. This guy has been an absolute monster in the playoffs. And he capped that off last season with a Stanley Cup. So, yes, I would absolutely trade Auston Matthews for Nathan MacKinnon, even though MacKinnon is 2 years older than Auston Matthews.
Okay. And
how about you?
No Canadian bias, though? Nothing to do with that?
No Canadian bias. I just think MacKinnon is I just think he's a better, more dangerous player than Auston Matthews, as elite as both of them are.
See, oh man, I just think it's hard because, and this is not a cop-out, they're really so different. And I guess both MacKinnon and Matthews, no one's really liked them in the NHL. But I'm going like 51-49. I think I'd go MacKinnon. Like that close though. Like I really do think Auston Matthews is a special player. And again, recency bias, right? I mean, even if we don't think it's affecting us, Nathan MacKinnon won a Stanley Cup and Matthews is having probably his worst season. So if you asked us 365 days ago, we'd be like, what are you talking about? Auston Matthews, 60 goals. And remember, Colorado was kind of considered chokers up until last year.
Exactly.
They couldn't get deep. And then even was it the bubble year? Or the year they blew it against Vegas.
Yeah, they kept losing in the second round when everyone thought that they were going to get to the Cup final. They were that team. They were like Tampa, right? Yeah. They were like the new Tampa, that the team that was so good every year but couldn't break through when it mattered most.
Yeah.
And now that's obviously the Leafs.
And now it's the Leafs. But see this trend though, and not to jinx it, it was Washington, and then it was Tampa, and then it was Colorado. Hopefully it's our turn now. Like this is what you're kind of nudging towards, boys? Like let's get it done. But 51-49 MacKinnon. And I will say, like you, that it's not a Canadian bias, but I will say maybe a little bit in me, maybe a little bit. There's a Halifax Mooseheads bias because I was in Halifax a few months back, and that's a cool spot. They love their Mooseheads. There was MacKinnon shit everywhere, Moosehead shit everywhere. They really support them, and they've been successful. So maybe that's nudging me a bit, but two great players. The slightest of edges goes to Nate Dogg.
Yeah, and let us know in the comments. Would you rather have Auston Matthews or Nathan MacKinnon? Let's call it for the next 5 years on the exact same contract. Who would you rather have as your highest paid player? Let us know.
I'm sure a lot of anti-Leafs fans are going to be filling the compliment section with the answer with their answers, right?
Leafs haters are going to flood in and say, "I'd rather have Draisaitl than both of them."
Here we go. Yeah,
that's what I'm waiting for, Lepore.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the next game now.
The happier game.
Yes, Leafs and Carolina. Now listen, Carolina, they've been going through a little bit of a rough patch.
Yeah.
They lost Andrei Svechnikov for the season with a torn ACL. That has decreased their Stanley Cup chances, their chances to win the Eastern Conference. They are just not the same team without Andrei Svechnikov.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Lepore before we came on. I think it's equivalent to the Leafs losing William Nylander. Like, it's that sort of blow to a team like Carolina, who doesn't have as many high-end offensive players as Toronto. So they've been kind of going through a little bit of a rough patch. I don't want to say they have to rediscover their identity, but it's going to be a lot harder for them to compete with Boston and Toronto and Tampa. I think they've now kind of taken a little bit of a step back. But saying all that, that was still a super impressive and dominant win over Carolina.
Yeah.
And that was great to see, especially after the Leafs did not look great against Colorado. To bounce back against the Canes was awesome to see as a Leaf fan.
Yeah. We were all pretty nervous going into this game because, here comes the shitstorm, losing to Colorado, maybe losing to Carolina. And then, you go on Twitter the next day and you see the takes of this is why the Leafs can't compete with the top teams and why they'll be out of the first round. So it was nice to see a performance like that, just start to finish. The Leafs look good. They were flying. But you said it, man, Carolina, something looked missing. From the times I've watched them earlier in the year, something looked missing. And I don't mean that objectively in the way that it's Svechnikov, one of their best players, being out of the lineup. But I always use the terminology when certain teams come at you in waves, and they're just too good, too fast, too deep. And it's almost like they're just pushing you over, and eventually it's going to happen until you can't hold on anymore. And that's how I always kind of viewed Carolina. Watching them that game, there's talent on the team. You can see when they got in the offensive zone, they could snap it around and create stuff. But I was never afraid during that entire game. And I'm not basing my entire opinion on that single game, but how things have gone for them lately. They lost Pacioretty too. Like, that's a lot, man. Like, I always make the point that people will say, oh, like, you lose this injury. Well, it could be, say, $10 million in total salary, or say $12 million in total salary. Well, now you're playing under the cap. Everyone's playing at 82 million and you're playing at 70 million. Good luck. Right? It's hard enough to win in this league, let alone when you're paying your roster less than the other competitive teams. So maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't see it with them now. I really don't. Hate to say that, because I like the Hurricanes. I like Brind'Amour. I think I would cheer for Freddie if the Leafs were out and Carolina was going on a run. But as it stands right now, in this Eastern Conference, I'd be pretty shocked if we see them, I'll say, in the third round. Like, I'd be pretty flabbergasted.
And especially considering how good the Rangers have looked recently, they just annihilated a depleted Nashville team on Sunday night, 7-0. But man, the Rangers are coming on strong. Like, it got off to a little bit of a rocky start after they picked up Patrick Kane and they were kind of sorting out their lines a little bit. But now the Rangers have quietly won 4 in a row, 6 of their last 7. You have the Devils, who I think are just more talented than Carolina at this point. And maybe the Devils aren't as good and experienced on the back end, but they have more firepower up front, especially now that the Canes have lost Svechnikov. So I think I have the Devils over the Hurricanes. I think the Rangers can beat the Hurricanes. And I don't think I would have said that confidently, Lepore, a week ago.
Yeah.
So right now, man, and a lot of people were even thinking that Carolina was that one team that could really compete with Boston. And not even based on this season. You go back over the recent meetings between those teams, Carolina has dominated Boston.
Really? Okay.
In terms of goal differential, mostly because of just goal differential. I don't know the exact goal differential between them over their last, let's say, handful of games, maybe 5 to 10 games, but I know it is pretty significant. So, yeah, I mean, saying all that, though, it was really good to see the Leafs just pick up a great win, a win that they didn't have to sweat over against a quality opponent. Because if they had lost to Colorado, lost to Carolina, then you're facing Ottawa on the second night of a back-to-back, and that was always going to be a sketchy situation against the Sens team playing for their playoff lives that always gets up for the Leafs. Like, there was a chance they could have lost 3 games in a row, Lepore.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing I'll ask you about Colorado, like your opinion. I mean, you look at their numbers, right? Their goaltending numbers. They have 3 goalies who've pretty well played an equal amount of games. Anderson's played 26. Rant has played 23. And Kochetkov has played 22. And their numbers are pretty similar. So I know there's situations where you mix up your goalie, but is there a debate going on as to who's going to be the starting goalie when the playoffs come?
There could be. I think that's more the case of Carolina has just been so good defensively, and that's the identity of their team that it almost doesn't matter who's in net for them.
Yeah, fair.
And I remember earlier in the season, I don't even know how to pronounce the goalie's name. Pyotr Kochetkov.
I think I butchered it too. Actually, Kochetkov, I said, or something. Kochetkov. Yeah.
You guys all know who we're talking about. He was
exactly.
on a heater earlier in the season when they had injuries, and he looked fantastic.
Yeah.
And honestly, at this point, he's had some stinkers. He played poorly against New Jersey. He didn't play well against the Leafs. So I still think it's Anderson's net. I think Anderson's the guy. But that's another team, man. Like, I'm not very confident in their goaltending. Everyone jokes about the Leafs. Like, could Ilya Samsonov or Matt Murray really steal a game? Well, how confident are you in these Carolina goalies at this point?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same situation, whether you want to admit it or not.
And as far as he goes, I mean, rocking number 52 between the pipes. I have a hard time believing in any goalie who's wearing number 52. Like something's wrong.
That does it. It's just the numbers trash, and you're like, well, this goalie sucks.
Something's wrong on the inside. I got no confidence.
Well,
it's like in the scene. It's like in the scene in Moneyball when they're like, "Oh, we don't want him. He's got an ugly girlfriend. No confidence. Bad number. No confidence."
All right, you heard it here first. Lepore thinks that if you wear a terrible number, you're probably terrible at hockey. There's a
so if he wins the
correlation between the two.
If he wins the Conn Smythe, come at me hard.
Oh man, can you imagine that? But right now, Lepore, the Hurricanes are still right behind the Bruins in terms of their odds to win the East. Okay. Boston is plus 150, Carolina is plus 425, and the Leafs are plus 450. Those are the top three right now in terms of the betting markets to come out of the East.
Okay.
It still seems right. I mean, Carolina is I figured was going to be there anyway, just because they don't have to play Boston. And I think that basically takes away from the Leafs and the Lightning, and the Lightning's odds to get through the East, because they obviously have to go through Boston, whereas Carolina has to get through the Metro and then play Boston.
And playing each other, right? Tampa has to play Toronto and then Boston. Toronto has to play, right? So, I mean, that's a big play in it too. Anything
else from this game or from Carolina that you want to discuss, or shall we move on to the next topic?
No, happy times, man, when you beat an opponent like that. And and that was the St. Pat's jersey game, right? They were the jerseys. Mixed opinions on that one. I feel a lot of people say it should be reversed. It should be like green with white, not white with green. What do you think, Bruno?
I like those jerseys. Now, I'm not a jersey expert like you are, but I think they're nice and clean. I like the colors. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Leafs have historically not played well in those jerseys. I mean, they finally won on Friday, but I believe I saw a stat that they were pretty bad, honestly, over the last 5 or 6 years wearing those jerseys, and they finally won a game.
It was definitely, and you're making my wheels turn now, a few years ago, they wore them here in Ottawa away. And at the time, I believe the Sens were like the 31st ranked team in the league, at the very dread days of the Ottawa Senators. And of course, the Sens won. So
sounds about right.
Yeah, you might be right about that. One thing I would love to see them bring back is when they wore the St. Pat's jerseys in the Sundin era, they had the brown helmets, brown gloves, and brown pants. And I'm not saying you got to bring back all three, but maybe even brown gloves. I'd appreciate that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, those were pretty cool. But no, I don't have any issues with the St. Pat's uniforms and their pants and helmets at this point. But let us know. Again, let us know in the comments what you think of the St. Pat's jerseys.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on now to the final game of the week against the Ottawa Senators. So, Lepore, I thought they were going to lose this game.
Oh, we all did.
We talked about this on the podcast. It was just a bad spot for the Leafs. Second night of a back-to-back, playing their fourth game in 6 nights. Sheldon Keefe was tinkering with the lineup. He let Giordano have a rest day. Wayne Simmons and Bobby McMahon were in the lineup. You have this Senators team fighting for their playoff lives. A Senators team that has been way better at home than they have been on the road. Everything lined up in my head that the Senators were going to win that game. And I honestly wouldn't have thought too much about it because it just lined up perfectly for a Senators victory. And Matt Murray decided to stand on his head. 52 shots.
What?
Made 48 saves, made some monster saves in the shootout. And the Leafs squeaked out a 5-4 shootout win. So what were your thoughts on the Leafs beating your hometown Ottawa Senators on Saturday night?
Just slide it in there, eh, Bruno? Yeah, so this actually, you know what? I'm embarrassed to say, and Leafs fans will throw some shit at me. I was not at the game, and this is the first Leaf game in Ottawa that I had not gone to in years. I don't even remember the last one I didn't go to because it was my brother-in-law's 40th birthday party. So
that's fair. That's a reason to miss the game.
Had the app going on my phone, watching the game while my wife's freaking out at me for not mingling in the party. This game, there's a lot to unfold in this game because it's not too often where you see a result and you can have two opinions that are on the opposite side on the spectrum, because like you listed everything, right? Back-to-back nights, the Leafs traveled. I mean, it's only Ottawa, but they still traveled. Fourth game in 6 nights, and guys out of the lineup. Like you said, Jordana out, Achari got hurt that game before. And that was, I think, a big factor in this game. If you look at, I usually go to Natural Stat Trick after the games, the Leafs got fucking obliterated in this game, especially at the bottom of their lineup. Some of the numbers didn't even make sense to me. I had it, that fourth line, like when Zach Aston Reese played 10 minutes, had 6 attempts on net for and 22 against.
Oh my God.
Terrible. I think even someone was even worse. I think it was Simmons was worse. But yeah, Simmons played 6 minutes. He had 4 attempts at the net while he was on the ice, 14 against in 6 minutes. How's that possible? And that's
getting bludgeoned at 5-on-5.
Yeah, and you see the Sens shot total, and you're like, oh, really? And you see these numbers, like, yeah, it was at the bottom of their lineup. And I will say it, man. And it's funny because he scored, but that's how hockey works. That may have been Marner's worst game as a Toronto Maple Leaf. People were really
Hey, you think you feel that strongly about it?
He was bad. Like I saw him make a mistake, and again, maybe tired, whatever, who knows, but he was making mental mistakes. He was making physical mistakes. Even him, man, Mitch Marner, who we scream all the time, is like, a two-way guy. He can do it all. Mitch Marner played 17 and a half minutes. He was only on the ice for 9 attempts on net for the Leafs, but 24 going the other way. Marner.
Brutal. I'm looking at these exact same numbers, Lepore, that stood out to me right away.
Yeah, and to clarify, these are 5-on-5, if I didn't say it before, but that's terrible, man. Terrible. So I don't know, man. Is it a case of like, we should be proud of them that they were dealing with a lot, playing all those games in that short amount of time, playing back-to-back. And at the end of the day, too, you're playing a desperate opponent. Like you're coming in, they're waiting for you, and Ottawa has to win all their games now. Their backs are against the wall, and compliment to the Sens for, taking it to us for the 60 minutes. So again, I don't know if I should be freaking out at how bad of a performance this was, or just saying, you know what, they were dealing with a lot and put a positive spin on it and say, fuck it, they got 2 points. And obviously the Murray thing is nice to see.
Yeah, I think you put more of a positive spin on this just based on all the factors that I listed. And sure, you never want to get this badly outplayed by a non-playoff team, but given all the circumstances, I'll give them a pass, especially since they found a way to win. Because in the past, I feel like a different version of this Leafs team, Lepore, would have just gotten blown out like 6-2.
Yeah.
And just
did you see? Like we got lucky on it. When the Sens tied the game, go back and watch this one, everyone. If you haven't made a point to freak out at it already, their tying goal, they got called back for the offside. First of all, okay, I mentioned Keefe before with the lines. Come on, man. Come on. What do you have, Nylander with, was it McMahon and Lafferty? Like, what the fuck kind of a line? What kind of a line is that? That's brutal. And then here the Leafs are, up by 1 with whatever was left, like a minute or 2 to go. DeBrincat scores. He had Nylander, Matthews, Marner on with the goalie pulled for the Sens. What? And then you look at the play. First of all, okay. One of the things that I'll always scream watching hockey that I'll say NHL players do that for the life of me, I can't understand, because since I was a little kid, I was told not to do it. leave your feet. Okay. You're that defenseman on the 2-on-1. Put your stick down, do what you got to do to block the pass, but don't leave your feet. On that tying goal, again, that was called back, Brody leaves his feet. So Giroux, who's a right shot, at the end of the day, Giroux being a right shot on the right wing where he was, there's not a lot to shoot at. Because he was, not that he was in tight, but the angle would have been really bad to actually beat a goalie. But Brody went too low, or maybe because he left his feet, he just continued to slide and went too low. It opened the lane for Giroux to make the pass over to DeBrincat. And if you look at the replay, it's brutal. The puck just sails by Nylander, Matthews, and Marner, who are just coasting. It was an ugly goal to give up, man. And part of me is like, okay, it's totally on these guys. But part of me looks at Keefe and asks, why are these three guys out there in this situation? Maybe you have one of them or whatever you're thinking, your combinations, but to have all three, confusing. And to me, that was disappointing. That was really disappointing.
And Lepore, there were some other alarming numbers from this game. I'm referring to natural stat trick as well, just as you were. TJ Brody, when he was on the ice at 5-on-5, the shot attempts were 32-13 for Ottawa.
TJ Brody, everyone. TJ Brody.
32-13 with Brody Crazy. On the ice.
Love Brody. I can't believe that. Yeah.
With Justin Hall on the ice at 5-on-5.
Here we go.
Ottawa out-attempted Toronto 35-13.
Yeah, not shocking. That one's not shocking. No one flinched at that one.
And you said it about the guys deeper in the lineup. David Kampf, -18 in shot attempts with him on the ice at 5-on-5. Zach Aston Reese, -16. Wayne Simmons, -10. Like you said with Marner, -15. Michael Bunting, -7. These are all just shot attempts I'm referring to. Bobby McMahon, -6. The only guys who were in the positive were Matthews and Yarncroke. And as I go down the list, Morgan Riley, Matthews, and Yarncroke were the only positive players in terms of the shot attempt differential at 5-on-5.
Riley's been good lately, eh?
Riley has picked it up.
I'm happy he's shut a lot of people up because he was dealing with a lot of shit being thrown at him throughout the season. But, oh, yeah, man, I couldn't believe what I was watching, how bad it was and how much they were running around. They didn't look like the Leafs. Because like what we've been preaching all year is this team looks different in the way that they dial down the game a little bit and they're more of a defensive team. And the numbers say that. It's weird, man. It was weird, but they got the win. So again, like you said, right, especially because they won, we can put the positive spin on it over everything negative happened. But what are we saying if they lose that shootout? Think of it that way. If we were looking
negative taste in people's mouths,
especially
it would have been bad, man, if they lost that game.
So if we would have been outperformed like that, okay, that bad, and then it would be shit to have our goalie play that well and not give him a W. Horrible.
And especially considering they blew the game in the final, what was it, 10 seconds when Tkachuk scored that tying goal?
That was my next point. They were up by 2 with what, like 8 minutes to go or 10 minutes to go.
And couldn't close it out. Typical,
that would have been a brutal loss.
Typical Leafs narrative. This team can't close it out when it matters most. And listen, people were still talking negatively about the Leafs, especially on Twitter. Now, to be fair, the Leafs have been getting sort of outplayed at 5-on-5 over the last month. I'll say since the Ryan O'Reilly trade. And I know Ryan O'Reilly's been out now for a number of games, but they haven't been the same team when you look at the 5-on-5 numbers. And again, maybe we chalk this up to they're still figuring things out. There was a lot of roster turnover. It sucks, obviously, that O'Reilly's still out of the lineup. But are you concerned at all, Lepore, that they just haven't quite been the same dominant team from like a 5-on-5 perspective?
What is weird, and if I just circle the reason why, I'd say it's because the lines are getting all messed up because they're trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do come playoff time. Like you mentioned, like David Kampf, his 5-on-5 numbers have been bad. His underlying numbers have been bad lately. To see that kind of performance from Brody, not good. So a lot of these guys that you rely on, Zach Aston Reese is typically very good in that department. Lately, he has not been good. So that's kind of alarming and shocking. What I'll point to, again, is them playing with different guys, things getting moved around, guys even playing different positions, and the whole 11 forward thing. Who knows? That other game with the Acciari forward got hurt. So now you're down to 10. That's the other thing that we saw from this game. How important is Acciari? Like, I think that messed everything up, not having him in the lineup.
Especially in the bottom 6. Not having him was a big loss.
Huge. And is it concerning? Yeah, it's concerning because you want to see them play well. I mean, when they first made these deals, we were the ones saying, they got like 20, 25 games left. Well, we're halfway there. So figure it out, guys. And it's not that they've been bad, but like you, Bruno, I'm an underlying numbers guy. I'm an advanced stats guy. When I see these numbers and they're not that good, I get a little nervous.
So here's what I'll say about the underlying numbers since the O'Reilly trade. It's interesting because the Leafs are 24th in the league in terms of Corsi for percentage. So they are only controlling 46% of the shot attempts at 5-on-5 since the O'Reilly trade. That's 24th in the league. But at the same time, Lepore, when you look at their goals for percentage, they're 6th in the league. They have outscored teams by 8 goals at 5-on-5 in that same time, which ranks 6th in the NHL. So even though they've been getting out attempted at 5-on-5, even if you want to look at scoring chance differential, high danger scoring chance differential, where it matters most on the scoreboard, the Leafs are still outscoring their opponents at 5-on-5, despite the underlying numbers not being as dominant as they were earlier in the season.
But those stats, like say, like for high danger scoring chances for and against, the numbers are good.
No, those
or
numbers
they're still
are
bad.
Not great.
Those
so you want to know
bad.
where they rank in high danger scoring chance percentage?
Sure.
26th in the league since the O'Reilly trade.
Wow.
They only have a shade over 44% of the high danger chances at 5-on-5.
Wow.
And then even just looking at scoring chances at 5-on-5, the Leafs, since the trade, also under 50%. They're 18th in the league with just a 48% share of the scoring chances at 5-on-5.
You're ruining my day,
alarming.
Bruno. Yeah, you're ruining my day, Bruno. I mean, we're used to seeing them at the top of these rankings, right? So wrong time, boys. Wrong time. Figure it out. 12 games to go. Figure it out.
Yeah, not a lot of time to get this right. And I believe they have 13 games left, and 9 of the remaining 13 are on the road, only 4 at home. They've been way more dominant at home this season, so that might be a little bit of a challenge as well with all these road games, but they got to figure this shit out, man, because sure, they're still in second place in the division. They've been winning games, but they have to get back to the team that dominated most of the season at 5-on-5 and controlled the pace of the game, was faster than a lot of the teams they played. And who knows, maybe this will be exactly what they need in the playoffs. But right now, it is a tad bit concerning to see them fall off a little bit with their 5-on-5 play.
100%, man. 100%.
All right, Lepore. Before we close this thing out, thoughts on the Eastern Conference playoff race right now? Because it seems like there's really just 3 teams that have a chance at this point. As cool as it would have been to see Ottawa and Buffalo make a charge, and they're still not mathematically out of the race, it just seems like time has run out on those teams. I mean, Buffalo just got demolished 7-0 by Boston. That was just an absolute beatdown. And I believe they lost 7-1 to Boston like a week and a half ago as well.
Well, did they have one they let in 10 last week or something?
Yeah,
too?
They lost 10-4 to Dallas.
Yeah.
That team, as
brutal.
explosive as they are, is also prone to just getting the doors blown off of them.
Apparently.
So right now, it's a 3-team race with the Islanders, Pittsburgh, and Florida. Who do you think is going to be the odd man out at this point?
Well, it's funny because it was maybe 2 weeks ago, we talked about the race and we both predicted that the Islanders and the Penguins would be able to hold on based on where they were in the standings and their experience. But now you see this Florida team charging, and it always seems like that you want to be that team. if you're the team out of the 3, even if you are 1 or 2 points behind, you want to be the team with the momentum. So I don't know, man. I don't know. Like if I had to bet, I'd still probably pick the Islanders and the Penguins to stay in, because I think I saw somewhere the Penguins have a pretty easy schedule. But if Florida gets in, I will not be shocked. Like, I'm putting it very, very close for Florida because they're charging, and it's that thing. You're riding momentum and try to stop us. It's hard, man. And Pittsburgh hasn't been that good lately, to be honest, either. So
yeah, you said it about Pittsburgh. They don't have that difficult of a schedule. Like, I'll just read off some of their remaining games: Senators, Capitals, Red Wings, Predators, Philly, Detroit, Chicago, and Columbus.
Okay, they got to get in. But
So
if
they have
that's
some
over
cake
half, then you gotta
matchups
get
in there. They should be able to get in. The Panthers have been charging recently.
Mm-hmm.
They look pretty good. Isn't it funny how the Panthers and Flames, after the big Matthew Tkachuk trade, are essentially in the same boat right now, where they're both
True.
fighting to make a wild card spot?
Yeah.
Pretty
Good
wild.
point. The
Yeah, as
Flames,
of-
man. See that stat on the Flames, like off topic. They've lost like 26 1-goal games or something. Crazy.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
absurd. I saw another stat. I'm not 100% confident in what I saw, but it's very close to what I'm about to tell you, where I think they're like the first team in NHL history to outshoot their opponents by 10 shots in
I
a
saw
certain number of games and essentially like lose all of those games.
Yeah, they've lost. I think the stat of it's games lost when shooting your opponent by 10 or more, and they were at like 12 or something.
Yeah, it's just
for
absurd.
the year. It's crazy. Bad
They get a
luck?
high volume of shots every night. Like they're one of the league leaders in just pure shots on goal per game, but it just seems like a lot of those shots have not been quality shots, and they are having a very difficult time finishing those chances. So, yeah,
Really?
Calgary's in trouble. The Panthers might be able to salvage their season here, but I'm with you, Lepore. I think it's going to be Pittsburgh and the Islanders that are going to get in, just as we predicted a week ago. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this podcast?
Well, Bruno, I look at this week for the Buds, and I look at the game on Tuesday night, and I'm scared, man, because superstar sniper Pierre Engvall looms in Long Island. So I don't know, man. Let's get ready for what? What's Engvall gonna put up on Tuesday night? What's the prediction?
Guaranteed goal and an assist.
You're saying
against
2,
the
1
Leafs on Tuesday.
goal and a helper.
Let's hope that John Tavares gives a big FU to the Islanders crowd and
Is that
decides
still a
to
thing?
go off.
Is that still the thing? They still boo him.
It's still a thing. It's always going to be a thing. Those
Fair
Islander
enough.
fans are so passionate. They're still pissed off that he left the team. And sure, they've actually been pretty successful since he left, just in terms of how far they've made it in the playoffs, getting to the conference finals a couple of times.
Yeah.
They still don't like John Tavares, and he still wants to stick it to them. So it's going to be a great atmosphere on Tuesday against the Islanders.
Let's get a dub and do the Panthers a favor. Leafs, come on. And do it for John. Those games in Long Island, you always want to win for John.
Exactly. Let's do it for JT, baby. Johnny Toronto. Get a win for him.
Come on.
Against the Islanders. All right. That is going to do it for episode 97 of the Gluttons for Punishment podcast. We are creeping ever so closely to episode 100.
The century mark.
Oh my goodness. We have something special planned for episode 100. So make sure that you stay tuned. It's coming up in a few weeks, and it's going to be great. But this was a great show today, Lepore. We went over a lot, and I'm really looking forward to this coming week for the Leafs. They play the Islanders, Panthers, and Carolina all on the road. And then actually they finish off the week Sunday against the Nashville Predators. But as I say at the end of every show, if you're a first-time listener or a long-time listener, it would be such a big help if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. And then, of course, if you're on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and review. We would appreciate it more than you could ever imagine. But until the next one, go Leafs go, and we will see you guys very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.